Welcome to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. This is a special edition to do with bands and those who claim to be those bands, etc., and the legal aspects involved. And it's just a coincidence that a few days ago I made a social media post ranting about how sometimes when a band breaks up or when they retire, another band just steps in and takes over the name. And we got quite a bit of fuss and muss over that. And one of the people commented something about, yeah, the Guess Who. And then my guest today, who literally wrote the book on the Guess Who, said, don't even get me started. And then there was a lawsuit. So, Robert, what's going on with the Guess Who right now?
It's pretty interesting. I guess it's been brewing for a long time. Some of your listeners might not know the rights to the name The Guess Who. Original bassist Jim Cale has owned the rights to that name for many, many years now, and he's toured for decades with various lineups that he calls The Guess Who. And original drummer Garry Peterson has been a part of it for a really long time. A couple years ago, Jim Cale retired from touring, making Garry Peterson the only original member, or even just from the original era, Guess Who member in what currently tours mostly in the US as the Guess Who.
Right. And it's been a bone of contention for a long time, I know. And as always in these situations, there are people buying tickets to shows and they expect Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman to be there. And of course, they're not. And from what I understand, Burton Cummings, at least, has had some conversations with Jim Cale and Garry Peterson over the years about it. And there were some cease and desist letters sent recently.
So what's finally happened, and it was just kind of announced on Monday of this week.
Editor's note, we originally recorded this interview on November 1st, 2023, as the news of this lawsuit was just breaking. Now back to the show.
Was that Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman have filed a lawsuit against the current Guess Who, saying that they are misleading fans, that they're not really honest about who they are, and they're seeking to stop them from. It's not even so much about using the name The Guess Who, because I don't think Burton is really he's not going to start touring with his band and call it The Guess Who. I really don't think he's going to do that. But it has to do with the fact that when the current Guess Who, Cale's Guess Who, run ads either on radio or even on Instagram or Facebook promoting their shows, they'll often use music recorded by the actual real Guess Who. So it's easy to see how somebody could be misled that at the very least Burton was going to be there because you're hearing his voice during the commercials. And yeah, over the years, I've seen many, many posts on social media, people who've gone to see the Guess Who and were really surprised at who came out on stage. And it's kind of notable too to say that in 2022, there were many, many concerts by the Guess Who in the States that even Garry Peterson wasn't present for. They substituted him for the guy who used to drum in the band Tesla.
Oh,
So
wow.
I don't know why Garry wasn't there, but he missed a lot of shows. He may have missed the majority of any 2022 tour dates that they did. And they do a lot of cruise ships and casinos and stuff like that, state fairs. He missed a lot of that. He may have missed the majority of that tour. So that means that if you saw the Guess Who in 2022, there's a good chance that there wasn't even a single original member on stage.
Wow. And from what I understand, I know that you shared a Rolling Stone article on this issue. And from what I understand, the Peterson Cale lineup has been using Randy and Burton's images in their promo material as well.
Yep, that's right. And they'll also do things like when it's the anniversary of, I don't know, like the American Woman single that was first released, they'll post it on their social media as if it's a memory that the current band all share. That, remember when this came out? But Gary's the only one on that record. None of the guys in the current band, of course, were on that record. So that's a little odd. The other thing that they do or that they've done, and I double checked it today. I'm not a big streaming guy, but I do use Spotify at my work. So if you look up the Guess Who on Spotify and you just want to listen to the Share the Land album, the band picture that you're going to see on your screen is of the current lineup. which does make it kind of seem as if they're the guys playing on that record. And of course, they're not.
Well, there is a line, absolutely. And there's another similar situation right now that's going on with the band Toronto. And it's interesting that when I spoke to Holly Woods a couple of years ago, I asked her how she felt about the band Toronto carrying on without her. And she said something to the effect of, well, if you were a successful business and you had to retire, wouldn't you want that business to continue to be successful? But now it's come out that she never really gave her permission for the name to be used. And I know that Brian Allen and Holly Woods, I think along with Sharon Alton, are pursuing legal options. But it's a real cesspool once you get into it, and there's other bands like the Headpins. I know that Darby Mills wasn't the original lead singer in the Headpins, but she was the singer that everybody associates with the Headpins and Too Loud McLeod. So there's no original Headpins. There's no original CCR, and now we've got this situation with the Guess Who, and it gets down to using other people's images and using the music. To me, that's just dirty.
Well, and there's different ways to do it. My understanding is that the current lineup of Foreigner that tours, there's no original members, but I think they're like licensed somehow, or they're allowed to do it. They're kind of authorized to be some sort of almost a Foreigner tribute band, even though they don't name themselves that.
And from what I understand too, Mick Jones, at least up until recently, was coming out and playing a couple of songs with that band. So they're a licensed Foreigner. And the same thing recently happened with April Wine. And it's kind of interesting. A few years ago, somebody suggested to me, Miles Goodwin is going to retire. You should audition to be his replacement. And I thought, I don't know. I guess maybe. Somebody has confidence in me to that level. But I looked into it. And in my Google searches, I came up with an interview with Miles, and he says, well, I don't really want to retire. I just want to stop doing the live shows. I want to continue all the recording and the songwriting and just have somebody else do all the work. And I thought, And we'll be right back after this. That would just be a tribute band, and nobody would get any gravy but Miles. But at the same time, now Miles has retired from touring with April Wine, although he is touring with Jim Henman on the East Coast. He has given his replacement full license. And Trooper's done something very similar with Ray Maguire and Brian Smith. Anyway, the guys from Trooper have given the go-ahead for the guys that were in their band to continue under that name, but there's no such agreement here. I understand, too, that you've been speaking with Burton Cummings' legal team.
Not specifically his legal team, but I am in touch with just kind of the team that works with Burton. Let's put it that way. Not exactly management, but, some people have asked, why is it taking so long for this to happen? Why after all these years is Burton suing Jim Cale and Garry Peterson? And I would just say delicately that in the past, I feel Burton did not have maybe the proper team behind him who would pursue something like this, or even thought that it was worth correcting. And now he does have those people behind him. So he's got some people working with him to correct this. The story, for what a lot of people might not know, so in 1978 or 77, there basically is no Guess Who. The Guess Who broke up in 75. They don't exist. Jim Cale decides he wants to play again. So that's fine. And there is a distinction here, which is why I think it's important to bring it up. So Jim Cale wants to play again, and he gets Donnie McDougall, who of course had been in the Real Guess Who, and he gets Kurt Winter, who'd been in the Real Guess Who. And at that point, the story is that he does ask Randy and Burton, is it okay if I do some stuff as the Guess Who? Now, in 1978, Burton's solo career is through the roof. A lot of big hits, some great solo albums. Randy, a lot of success with Bachman Turner Overdrive. And, at the time, we didn't have this kind of classic rock mentality. The name The Guess Who didn't mean that much at the time. You wouldn't think that by the time CDs came, everybody would be rebuying their whole collections again. And now we're rebuying them all again on vinyl. And, but that didn't really exist in 1978. It was all about going forward. and both Burton and Randy were going forward. So for Jim to put out an album, which he did in 1978, called Guess Who's Back, and it's an okay kind of record. It sort of sounds a little bit like the Guess Who because Donnie is doing most of the singing and Kurt even sings a little bit on one song. That's one thing. And when they would play a lot of that new material along with old, although not that old at the time, Guess Who songs. That's a little different. Over the years, that morphed into kind of a Guess Who tribute band where they're doing almost all classic material from the vintage era of Burton's era, really. And that's when it really gets murky. That now you're not just like a new band with some different guys, but some of the old guys are there. And, I think that original Jim Cale version of the Guess Who has some validity to it. I don't think it's great. It's definitely not as good as the Bannatyne album or the Artificial Paradise album or any of them really. But it still has some validity because of who's in it. And then after a while it's like just Jim Cale and a bunch of, guys from Toronto and stuff. That's when it really changes. And then now it's at a point where, like I said, Gary's missing dates. Jim's retired. I saw an interview not that long ago. It was with Garry and with the current lead vocalist of the Guess Who. And they tried to make the point that because the current vocalist has been in the band longer than Burton was, which is true, the original Guess Who is like 1965 to 75. So they're trying to make the point that because this guy's been there longer than Burton, that's what makes this version of the Guess Who so valid. That this guy he's more a member of the Guess Who than Burton ever was.
I would, play the devil's advocate on that, I would have to talk about the body of work. I mean, what kind of a body of work has come from that lineup?
Well, and that's exactly my point. His name's Derek, and he's confusing the quantity of the amount of time that he's been in the Guess Who with the quality of the work that he's put out. And it's no coincidence that when they go out on stage, the majority of the material that they're playing is from that earlier guy. So to say like, oh, Burton was only in the band for 10 years, well, it's his songs you're singing every night. So apparently in those 10 years, he did some pretty good stuff.
Yeah.
The Guess Who put out a new album this year. And, tell me how many hits off of it you can name
Yeah,
right
not
now.
one.
Or
Not one. Have you listened to it?
I have.
Okay. Okay. I guess we don't have to really
Yeah, I take one for the team, Tommy.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want you to send me a copy, but anyway, that's great. Now, I mean, sometimes there's a progression in a band, as we all know. I mean, look at the Beatles. It wasn't the Fab Four initially, Stu Sutcliffe and Pete Best and whatnot. I think about the Guess Who. Originally, Chad Allen was the lead singer, right? Now, they, as far as I can remember, they had one hit, albeit a big one, Shaken All Over. That being said, once Burton Cummings joined the band, they went through the roof, literally. I mean, all the hits are Burton Cummings with the exception of that one. And as you said, I can't name any new Guess Who songs. Not one.
Well, some people get caught up in a lot of things that I don't think are really that big a deal. Like the Rolling Stone article mistakenly refers to Randy and Burton as both being like co-founders of the group. So yes, that is a mistake on the part of Rolling Stone. Burton is not the original lead singer. But for all intents and purposes, he is the singer from the beginning of, yes, their huge hits. And I'm a big fan of the Chad Allen era. Don't get me wrong. They did have some regional hits after Shaken All Over. I like that stuff a lot. The original piano player, Bob Ashley, he's a friend of mine now. So I like those albums a lot. But yeah, when people think of the Guess Who, and especially if you buy like a greatest hits or some kind of a compilation of the Guess Who, it's probably going to start with like No Time or These Eyes and go forward from there.
No doubt. I think about Journey as well. The original Journey lineup did not have Steve Perry in the band.
Right.
It was Greg Rowley singing and Neil Sean singing, and Ainsley Dunbar on drums, and I think Steve Smith on bass. Editor's note, the actual original lineup of Journey was, in fact, Neil Sean on guitar and vocals, Greg Rowley on keyboards and vocals. They also had a rhythm guitarist named George Tickner. On bass originally was Ross Valerie, and on drums was Prairie Prince. Now Ainsley Dunbar and Steve Smith would both join later on. Anyway, back to the show. That said, once Steve Perry joined the band, very analogous to what happened with the Guess Who, all of a sudden to the moon, right? And when you think about Journey, you think about Steve Perry as the singer.
Yeah.
And I think it's very much the same with the Guess Who and Burton Cummings. And even though Randy Bachman was not the longest tenured guitarist, he's certainly the one that people associate with being the guitarist in the Guess Who.
Yeah, a little bit to a fault, because ever since this news broke on Monday about Randy and Burton suing the Guess Who, I've seen many social media posts, people saying if Burton and Randy aren't on stage, then it's not the Guess Who. Or, the Guess Who has to include Burton and Randy. And that's not really true either. Because, yes, the Guess Who did great albums and they had a lot of great songs after Randy left. So Guess Who fans aren't always the most knowledgeable with some of that stuff, which is how the current Guess Who gets away with it. Because people will go to the shows and sometimes not know better that they didn't see the real Guess Who.
And how many people at those state fairs are yelling out, "Let me hear Dominic Troiano play"? And we'll be right back after this. I love Dominic Troiano, and his brother is a great guy and all that, but we don't associate Dominic Troiano as the guitar player with the Guess Who.
No, but I mean the era right after Randy left, where you have Kurt Winter, who was not only a great guitar player but brought a lot of his own material and was a songwriting force. That's where I have to get a little kind of technical and say, well, the Guess Who did a lot of good stuff without Randy. Don't get me wrong, but it's still the original era, which would be Burton is the main anchor for that. In the same way that Bill Wallace isn't the original bassist, but he replaced Cale and he's on albums like Number 10 and Artificial Paradise. So I still consider him a bassist from the original era. They went through a few guitar players, but, I would never discount the contributions of guys like Donnie McDougall and especially Kurt Winter from a songwriting perspective. The thing that Bill Wallace does, which I kind of wish was more the Cale Peterson approach, he does these shows with Carl Dixon.
From Coney Hatch, yeah.
Right. So Carl's got this, he's got like 4 or 5 different careers going on now because he's revamped Corey Hatch and he does these solo things and he's an inspirational speaker and, somehow he's got more hours in the day than I do, that's for sure. But one of the shows that he does, and I've seen it, and it's a lot of fun, and it's just called like Carl Dixon Sings the Guess Who. And Bill Wallace is in the band. And then he's got some other Canadian guys, and I think the guitar player Laurie, he was in a later version of the Guess Who for a little while. But Carl and Bill, they don't come out and say that they're the Guess Who at all. But they do come out as people who are both in the Guess Who at different times. And they tell some stories in between. And Bill gets up there and he gets to sing lead vocals on a couple of songs. And it's actually a lot of fun. That has a certain amount of value to me. I really enjoyed seeing those guys. I hope I get to see them again.
And it's valid because they're going out and saying it's Carl Dixon singing the Guess Who. It's not Carl Dixon. It's not I'm Burton Cummings. It's not I'm the Guess Who.
That's right.
It's totally valid. And in the same way as, most tribute acts bill themselves as a tribute. That said, do you have a sense of where this whole legal issue is going to go?
Well, I've said for a long time that I think Jim Cale has a price. He's like 79 or like 80 now, but I think he has a price. And I think that price probably could have been met 20 years ago. And, that's an issue why it wasn't pursued. There's some quotes by him in the Rolling Stone interview, which are from an early article. They didn't talk to him. He's a tough guy to get out of his cave to talk to. I'll tell you that. I tried 3 different ways to interview him for my book. And man, I could not make headway with that guy. He doesn't want to talk to anybody. But the quotes that are in that Rolling Stone article from a few years ago, he actually kind of says that he'll keep a band out there no matter who's in it just to piss off Burton Cummings. And he says, I'm his karma. I don't think Jim Cale actually knows maybe what karma means and what that entails because he's going to have a bill that he's going to have to pay. So it's tough, but at least if they went out and called themselves the Guess Who show featuring original drummer Garry Peterson, assuming that Gary's going to be at the shows, nobody would have a problem with it. And again, it's more or it's less about the name than about them using the music during commercials to advertise the shows. That's actually misleading the fans, and that's kind of the bigger issue. So where it's going to go, I think they're going to offer Jim. I don't know if Jim has the pockets for a lengthy legal fight. I think, there's a good chance that he's going to have to give it up. He'll probably fight as long as he can. I mean, he is a pretty, mean kind of guy, and he's a tough guy. He doesn't like being bullied at all. And like I said, a lot of what he's doing is just out of spite anyway, which is a pretty angry way to live when you're, 79 or 80 years old. I have this whole theory, if you're 79 years old and you're still that angry at the world, you just haven't figured out what this is. But, that's his journey.
No kidding. So I guess we'll have to see how this whole thing shakes out. But let's remind the people, you've written more than one book. We talked on this show about Wheatfield Empire, which is literally the book on the Guess Who. There it is, Wheatfield Empire. And where can people get that?
It's still available. It's on Amazon. You can get signed copies directly from me. Your local Indigo or Barnes & Nobles in the States, they'll order it in for you. And it's around. It's not too hard to get. Or like I said, you contact me privately, and I mail out signed copies all the time.
And you've written books about Cheap Trick and Nazareth.
That's
and right. I understand there is a new one in the works with little Stevie
That's
Van
right.
Zandt. Okay.
Yeah, my new book is about kind of my personal hero, little Stephen Van Zandt. It's pretty much done, actually. I've got a team of kind of proofreaders going through it all and trying to make it somewhat presentable. And then I'm supposed to be talking to Stephen himself at some point. I don't know if it's going to be next month or hopefully soon. And then I just have to kind of drop in his little quotes everywhere. But other than that, there's like 19 chapters. It's all done. I've interviewed 22 or 23 something ex and current band members who've worked with him. So it's the most involved with the actual artists of any of my books, even though Burton was a great contributor to my Guess Who book. So I'm really happy with it, but we're not rushing to get it out because we want to make sure that it's the best possible version of it can be. But I would say early to maybe spring 2024, it'll be out.
Well, that sounds awesome. Why don't you just remind people where they can find you on YouTube?
There is a channel. We haven't really updated in quite a long time. I think if you just search my name on there. I'm also on Facebook under my own name. I'm on Instagram under robert.james.lawson. So I'm easily found. And like I said, happy to send out signed copies of the books or talk with anybody about music. I talk about music all day at my day job. So,
yeah,
might as well talk about it all night when I'm not at work.
I was going to say, like most people involved in the entertainment industry who can actually pay the bills, we have other jobs. And I know you have to get to one in the morning, so I won't keep you for much longer. But Robert Lawson, thanks so much for once again taking the time to do this with me. And until next time, cheers.
Thanks, Tommy.
Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens with the lawsuit that Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman have brought against the people who are currently calling themselves the Guess Who. And I will put the link to Robert Lawson's Facebook profile in the show notes for this if you want to talk to him or get a copy of his book about the Guess Who, Wheatfield Empire. That's the easiest way to reach him. Okay. Thanks again for listening to Tommy Solo's Famous Friends. Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a one-man production, meaning that I've done all the work, including recording, editing, guest acquisition, etc. And hey, here's some news. We've just recently joined forces with 519 Magazine, so you can check out my interviews there as well. The theme song for Tommy Solo's Famous Friends is a clip from my original composition, The Burn, all rights reserved. If you enjoy the show and you'd like to help us keep it going, why don't you click on the Buy Me a Coffee link in the show notes. Hit the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram. And until next time, cheers.